everyone, my name is Anurag. I secured All India Rank 6 in the Indian Forest Service 2019. In this video, I'll try to explain the various stages of the exam, and I'll mostly focus on the prelims part and the compulsory papers in the mains. I'll be doing a separate video about the optionals and the interview preparation. The Indian Forest Service is one of the 3 All India services apart from the Indian Administrative Service and the Indian Police Service. This service mostly involves managing the forest wealth of the country, including trees, natural resources like soil and water, wildlife, the tribal heritage, and more recently climate change and pollution related issues. There is a mains. It is separate from the civil services mains, and then there is an interview again, which is separate from the civil service. So very often the prelims becomes the main bottleneck for aspirants who are looking to join the Indian Forest Service. The cutoff for writing Indian Forest Service mains goes about 15 marks higher than the civil services, and that pretty much is the biggest hurdle that faces someone who is very genuinely interested in joining IFS. 2019 was my second attempt. My first attempt was in 2018, in which I cleared the cutoff for the civil services mains, but I could not clear the cutoff for the forest service mains. So I'll be detailing out a strategy for preparing for prelims, mostly based on what I think were the mistakes I made in my first attempt. So let's just jump right into the prelims preparation. First thing I would say is there is no specific strategy as such which will be different from how you prepare for civils for someone who's interested only in the civil services, and it's only based on how thorough your revisions are and how well you have practiced and how confident you are in the exam hall that affects your chances of getting those 15 to 20 marks extra. And one of the biggest mistakes I made in my 2018 attempt was not making consolidated notes of the various subjects that are needed. Most of you watching this video would be familiar with the courses of study for the prelims. I'll share a list of the books I followed for making notes in the video description. So making notes or not is a very personal preference, and I wanted to have notes so that with the sole objective of being able to revise things quickly before in the month before prelims. And having notes also helps you have a mental picture of the things that are covered under a particular topic, and I think that helped me a lot in the 2019 attempt. Secondly, I would say test series are important. They help you get an idea of where you stand, and more than that, each test series has its own timetable to cover the entire syllabus, and that helps you stay on track and complete things well in time to have revisions. I would suggest solving test papers of at least 2 different coaching franchises. Most of the people follow one of the few ones like Vision IS, Insights, IS Baba, Forum IS, etc. One of the disadvantages of doing only one particular franchise would be that you get very accustomed to how they frame questions, and after a point you can probably solve something that you're not thorough at simply by guessing how the examiner in this coaching institute sets questions, and that artificially inflates your marks and probably your confidence, and when you go sit in the prelims, then it becomes a problem because then you think you're not familiar with this anymore. And a big mistake I did in 2018 was using this test series only to see how much I'm scoring. For example, once I scored something in the range of 120, I was to be quite happy, and I just left things at that. Did not bother where I'd make the mistakes. Test series should primarily be to find out where your gaps in learning are, and then you should go back and prepare these areas well. So for the 2019 attempt, something I changed was I analyzed every single question I attempted in a test series, be it 100 questions or be it 5 to 10 questions anyway. More important part is to invest time in analyzing where your mistakes are. Another mistake that many aspirants do, and which was actually exposed in the 2019 prelims, was leaving out subjects like ancient history, medieval history, and culture. These are traditionally considered very low probability areas, but 2019 prelims had a quite sizable chunk of questions from these areas. So if you want to be aiming for the IFS prelims cutoff, then I would suggest that you gather all the marks that you possibly can. Do not leave out areas like this simply because they are messy, or they are too much to remember, or no one around you is preparing them. You should not be making that mistake. The most important part would be to find out your own strategy, because almost everyone who is preparing for this exam has certain strengths and weaknesses which are unique to them, and no two people can probably have the same identical strategy. There is just such a vast sea of syllabus. Revisions again are very important. Certain people might need 2 revisions, certain might need 5 revisions. Even the same person might need, let's say, just 1 revision in geography but 5 revisions in polity. For me myself, polity was one of my weakest areas, and I had to carry out many more revisions of polity than any other subject. But one standard I think you can hold yourself to is to not make mistakes in questions that are that can be solved from any of the basic books, like the NCERTs or the standard reference books like Lakshmikant, G.C. Leong, or Nitin Singhania's Art and Culture, and the current affairs that have been in news over the past 1 year, which have been in Hindu. These are the areas that someone who has been seriously preparing will probably never get wrong in the exam. And when you get something wrong from these areas, it really puts you out, puts you behind a lot of people. Now let's come to the mains part. Once you have cleared the prelims, the mains happen sometime very early in December. And the mains of IFS consists of 6 papers. There is the GK paper and the general English paper, each of 300 marks. And then you have to choose 2 optionals, 200 marks each. So there is 800 marks of optionals. My optionals were zoology and forestry. I'd be talking about my optional strategy in detail in another video. But for now, I'll focus only on the GK and the general English paper. So your paper 1 is general English. And compared to the civil services, the general English here is actually counted in your final marks, and it affects your rank. And many people actually ignore this paper, but I personally feel this paper is a game changer. And English proficiency for anyone is built over a very long period of time, but regardless of how strong or weak your English is, in the days before the mains exam, you can definitely do a few things that can boost your marks by 10 or 20, and that definitely reflects in your rank as well. First of all, the English paper has essay, then it has letter writing, report writing, précis, comprehension, and grammar. I personally feel grammar is the most important part here, and preparing this section well can easily give you 5 to 10 extra marks, which can really make a difference. For grammar, you have things like idioms and phrases, noun adjective interchange, active passive speech, direct indirect speech, etc. And all of these can be prepared from the Wren and Martin Grammar and Composition book. Then I think even giving just about an hour every day in the month of November, right before your mains date, can help you significantly in improving your marks. Then coming to comprehension, précis writing, you can download maybe the last 10 years of question papers and have a look at how the questions are, and that should give you a fair idea of what you're expected to answer in these questions. For report writing and letter writing, these are all formal forms of composition, and you should see a few sample letters and reports to have an idea of what is the level of formality and details that you have to go into. Apart from that, very important would be your format of writing. Each of them has a particular formal format, and you can, I followed the CBSE standard 10th board format. Then you have comprehension, which is the same as what you do for the civil services mains, the compulsory English paper. essay here, if you have been preparing for the civil service mains, essay should not be an issue at all. But in the IFS essay paper, I would recommend writing very simple, lucid English and free from grammatical errors. People say there is not much emphasis on highlighting facts and figures like you do in your civil service essay. Now let's come to the general knowledge paper, the paper 2. You would be giving it in the afternoon after the English paper on the first day. GK here, even though there has been no syllabus laid down for this, if you see the past 10 years question paper, you can figure out that the syllabus is pretty much the same as general studies for the prelims. So if you have notes, it becomes very easy to revise during the last few days. Having said that, you can't really hold UPSC accountable if they ask questions from certain other areas, because GK is by definition everything under the sun. So GK would have 24 questions, and finishing the paper here becomes a bit tricky. So I'll suggest keeping your answers short and precise. Use diagrams wherever possible, and use flowcharts and schematics as well. They help you reduce the amount of text and help you finish your answers faster. And there is a particular, there is a science section, there's a technology section, and these combined have 8 odd questions, and this always forms the most tricky part of the paper, because almost always even the toppers are not aware of a few questions in this part. So I would say just prepare the other parts well, like history, polity, geography, economy, and then this science and technology bit. So even if you are leaving, even if you think you do not know the answer to 1 or 2 questions, it should not be that big of a deal breaker, because just remember that it's the same for everyone. If you have prepared seriously, then it's as difficult for the person next to you in the video description. So all the best.